So, Special K himself, Ketamine Keith Starmer, the serial liar, is collapsing in the polls once again, whilst once more putting the boot into Liverpool, where Labour's strongest support has historically always been. His aversion to instead of challenging the Tories now seems to border on a phobia. His fear of upsetting the predominantly Tory-supporting mainstream press, as shown by recent articles attacking recent BBC, yes, I did just say that, BBC interviews, have been slammed for being mean to Johnson. We know Starmer has had an easy ride in the press. Is his fear of the media ultimately underlying everything he's doing? And what are the consequences of that for us? Two polls came out yesterday. The usual weekly YouGov one, which we on the left are always a little bit snippy of. It tends to weight in favour of the Tories. But it was set up by a couple of Tories, including the current education minister. And you might think, well, that's not all that surprising, really, is it, Damo? But here it is, showing after the last week, where we've endured the spectacle of the Tories' self-congratulatory conference, that those Tories have seen their poll lead stretched by a point to now lead Labour by 10 points. It's often said, but it bears repeating, we were told anyone but Corbyn would lead the Tories by 20 points. Yet Keir Starmer has proven that to be utterly untrue. But to be 10 points behind the Tories in a poll that typically favours the Tories anyway is pretty bad, and it's consistently bad. Starmer has led Labour for 18 months now, and there is zero sign of this polling trend changing. He trails the Tories, now in power for 11 years, week after week, month after month. Putting the boot in further to Starmer's abject failure came a few hours later when Kantar produced their monthly poll. And this one was late coming out by 17 days, presumably because they wanted to make sure the results were accurate, because they beggar belief. Look at the state of this. The Tories gain 6 points as Labour loses 4 points. But also, check out the dates this poll was conducted over. Straight after Labour Party conference. Straight after Starmer's 90-minute bore-fest of a speech. He got a conference bounce from it all right, straight through the floor. This was also the week where the fuel crisis peaked. The government was getting its arse handed to it over that as a result of its Brexit mishandling. And still, Starmer made that week all about himself and all about attacking his own party through factional changes at conference. And as a result, the public gave the Tories a frigging boost, a 10-point swing to the government of the last 11 years, immediately after the main opposition party and their leader were at centre stage. For the entire duration of his tenure, Starmer has, by and large, been given an easy ride by the media. He lied to get elected, after all. He has torn up all the pledges he made to his party to get elected and has instead attacked his own membership from day one, turning away many in disgust or purging others on the most pathetic of charges. But the media have cast a blind eye to much of that. Thanks to changes he got past a conference, mainly thanks to a single right-wing-led trade union, a contradiction in terms if ever there was one, the now ratified general dictator, laughably referred to still as a secretary, can now admit people to the party or refuse them for any reason he so desires. Purging socialists, for it is the left under attack, of course, whilst tearing up democracy. Labour still calling itself a socialist democratic party. My God, it's nothing of the sort anymore. Anyway, I've digressed. The media have given him a free ride because he's attacked the left. He's still got Corbyn suspended as a Labour MP, despite Corbyn being reinstated as a Labour member. Yet another bit of anti-democratic diktat there. Starmer's internal war makes him, by and large, harmless, and the media have pretty much left him to hemorrhage his own leadership, frankly, which he has done a splendid job of, about the only thing he has done a good job of. He has not won people over, and so, after breaking another pledge, doing something he said he wouldn't do, because he understood the hurt involved, he said, his team requested that Starmer get a column in the worst of the Murdoch dross media, the Scum, a paper so named for its reputation rather than its title, for it shares nothing with the warm, bright object lighting our lives each day up in the sky. It's the utter pits, and despite claiming to know the hurt caused, particularly to the people of Liverpool regarding this rag, he wrote in it anyway, and that, aside from the rigging of their mayoral candidacy up in Liverpool, leading to a mayor being elected who refused to ban an arms fair and has had all its local election candidates imposed on it from the right wing, as Luke the Nuke Akehurst got put in charge of the selections, it really is as if Starmer wants Liverpool voters to take their votes elsewhere. And frankly, I hope they do. is nothing less than he deserves. The sheer arrogance is stunning. Starmer wanted to reach Scum readers, but when the paper was running columns at the same time as his, but running him down, though of course nowhere near on the same level as they did with Corbyn, they were terrified of Corbyn, weren't they? They aren't afraid of Keith at all. Quite what Starmer has achieved, except to turn off more Labour voters and to bring down some avoidable criticism and ire from those horrified by his actions on his head, is debatable. Another broken promise from a guy whose leadership is notable for broken promises and not much else. Between him and Johnson, the only difference is a hairbrush, and that damages trust in our electoral system when neither prospective Prime Minister, for it is one or the other under our system, is at all trustworthy. Of course, Starmer's whoring to the right-wing filth media is typical of many political leaders over the last 4 decades. Murdoch's support has typically meant whoever kissed his ass the most became the nation's leader. So as much as there's an element of wanting his favour, which he clearly hasn't got, there's fear from Starmer too. Too many of our politicians fear our billionaire-owned media. Corbyn didn't. He challenged them. He utilised alternative media. And he travelled the country speaking to people in massive rallies, festivals, sports stadiums, and people turned out to listen to him as well. All this subverted the opinions of those papers. If he'd succeeded, as he nearly did in 2017, he'd have been the first Prime Minister to owe Murdoch and the rest of the shithouse media nothing since 1979. Sadly, his own party machine seemed to have been the reason he didn't get there. Starmer's faction, as they are, the right of the party, undermined us all and delivered us more Tory cruelty, for that is what they preferred. Workers' Party, my arse. Not with this lot in charge. Starmer's actions since have just doubled down on this, and the brass neck of his hangers-on to tell us we need to get behind him to get the Tories out. Well, you wouldn't back a left leader that we chose. You undermined him, and you expect us to do what you didn't now, as the left did before under the likes of Blair or Kinnock, and to basically know our place in the party, shut up, be quiet until we need you to campaign for us. Well, I think those days are over. What is the point of backing one establishment shill over another? One Tory party over an establishment equivalent that might toss us a few crumbs, but ultimately change nothing? No, thank you. I'm sick of that. So are a good many others, I bet, as well. Johnson, however, is still the media's favourite, and you can see that by the way they've rallied around perceived unkindness towards him by, of all things, the BBC. Nick Robinson himself, former chair of Oxford's Young Conservatives, no less, had to tell Johnson to stop talking the other day when he just kept talking dribble, punctuated with lies as every sentence that comes out of his mouth always is. Apparently it sparked 558 complaints of bias. Robinson literally is a Tory. You kind of have to be at the BBC. You don't get a foot in the door otherwise. But even many Tories have had a gutful of Johnson now and his failure. It paints their party in a bad light. And when you want the leader of the country to put up some answers and he avoids doing it in displays of abject windbaggery and ruffling his hair as he does, it's little wonder some hosts, no matter what their political persuasion might be, get a tad exasperated. So are the people listening. Personally, I'm more angry about poverty, homelessness, COVID mishandling, Brexit balls-ups, the kind of things that's, you know, affecting each and every one of us every single bloody day, rather than a bunch of privileged fail readers whinging that dear old Boris has been treated so awfully. Get out in the world and look around you at what Johnson has done to this country. Been a bit mean? It's the least he bloody deserves, and the very least, licence fee payers ought to expect. Andrew Marr told him he wasn't being truthful on his show on Sunday as well. Came in for a bit of flack too. But Marr is the softest touch interviewer the Beaver has. Johnson ran away from an interview with Andrew Neil during the election campaign. This is a guy who is used to having things orchestrated for him, stage managed, is actually incapable of dealing with genuine scrutiny because he's never had to. Wealth and privilege all the way. Now, Starmer might think he's got good reason to fear the press, to need to seek their assent rather than ours. His predecessor, as I said before, never had to, and he led a movement. He enthused and inspired thousands, and no newspaper could prevent that. Ultimately, Brexit was his undoing, but helped in large part by Starmer himself and his traitorous move to declare Labour a Remain party, driving away Leave voters and losing red wall seats he frankly doesn't have a prayer of winning back. All to further his own career ambitions, it's been reported since, yet doesn't have an ounce of Corbyn's authenticity or passion. He talks about himself. He's only concerned with himself. There's enough politicians like that. We don't need another narcissist like that leading the country. Between his lack of vision, his factional attacks, his lack of warmth or charisma, his lack of policies, it's little wonder nobody knows what he stands for or what he'd do in power. With the deceit he's exhibited throughout his already too long tenure as Labour leader, many wouldn't believe him now even if he did. You can have Starmer, or you can move Labour to a position where they can beat the Tories, but you cannot have both. And the polls are making that starkly clear. The Tories are becoming more emboldened by the lack of political threat to them, and it'll only get worse the longer Starmer clings to his position. By-election after by-election lost. He's got the worst by-election result in Labour's history to his name. And he only hung on to Batley and Spend by putting up Jo Cox's sister, barely a Labour member for more than a month, as the candidate, and even then, only just holding it, with a majority a tenth of what it was under Corbyn. We've seen electoral rule changes go through, utterly undemocratic, to allow the Tories to hold on to power with even fewer votes. We've seen our rights to protest threatened, our civil and human rights threatened. We're looking at a Home Secretary prepared to allow people to drown at sea rather than permit a safe route to asylum here. A Foreign Secretary complaining the sea is closed whilst Kabul fell, and over 150,000 people have died in this country of COVID. Not to mention Bozo himself seems to be permanently on holiday. And these people are leading in polls by double digits. Starmer is in the way of being able to challenge this. He's the block. His insistence on clinging on is harming the country and strengthening, not weakening, Johnson's position. A challenge has to come from within the parliamentary party, and it has to come soon, or Labour MPs may as well not bother. The party will be dead. It will be too late by the time they do, as people find another home to go to. Forced to, frankly, because we need to get these Tories out, and Starmer is preventing that from happening.